create it. So Anupama, I will hand that over to you. How did you come up with it? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay. This was my first ever screenplay, and I wrote it 10 years ago when I was just kind of experimenting with what a screenplay could be as opposed to a play. So I was just kind of experimenting with playing with the genre, the two genres. And I thought, let me write a screenplay where there's no dialogues at all, or if there is, it's very basic dialogue, So I just wanted to see how I could tell a tale that spans over 20 years without any dialogues. And you do need a device, and the device is food. And again, at that point when I wrote it, I set everything in India. This was a couple, a newly married couple, who leaves their home state and migrates within the country to another state. So, and I remember, because I'm a 70s born child, my mom spent her entire 70s cooking in a kerosene stove. And the next stage was a gas stove, and she really struggled to move for the transition to happen from the kerosene to the gas. How much heat, how much, just to understand how food reacts with different cooking implements in a gas stove. So I had that in mind, and then flash forward years later, when Jane and I were working with the National Theatre. I was a writer in residence, and she was the director in residence around the same time. And we hit it off, and we wondered, if there was a project that we could do together. And when we kept chatting and chatting, we realized we both wanted to make movies. And then I said, actually, I do have a screenplay which I've never shown to anybody. Would you be interested? And she read it, and she said, I love it. And then Sheena came on board at some point, and then I remember the conversations then. The universality of that story could be set anywhere. And again, around the same time, when I was in the UK, I heard a lot of conversations from Desi actors saying how little of their stories ever get onto screen or onto stage, and that there are just not enough of their stories doing the round. If there are the stories, then it's told from a white lens, and it's exoticized. So we wanted, can you write something that pertains to us, our stories? And that, I think that was when Sheena and Jane, and then they had this conversation, and the feedback was, could you make it an English-based story? So again, I went about reimagining this couple and their story of their entire lives, told in 20 years. But they're an immigrant couple moving from Gujarat to London. And I had to draw on my own experiences when I was a student in the US. And again, any Indian who goes abroad, the first struggle is the struggle for food. How to cook, how to procure Indian stuff, how to get the Indian masalas, and how to bring the taste and the smell of home into your room, into your kitchen. And that was something that I drew heavily on when I did the rewrite for Kitchen Dales. So my first draft was set in India, and 10 years later, my second draft was set in the UK. And Jane, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just I don't know, that it was, that although that the device and the sort of cultural setting, like, we really also dug down into the particular relationship of this couple. It's not saying every couple have this experience or every immigrant has this experience, but by being really specific about the characters and what these characters experience, that actually kind of lends itself towards that universality. So we had like people working on the film from all over the world, from like 3 or 4 different continents, like really, and everyone was like, oh, this is like my family, this is like, so that was something that was really special to kind of make it really specific, but at the same time it kind of spoke to such a wide range of people. Yeah. And Anu, you're doing yourself an injustice. The film covers about 40 years in 20 minutes.
Of course. It covered, I was just thinking, 2008 was my first draft, and we are in 2021 now.
Wow.
I'm bad at math, so it took me some while to make that calculation.
So Sheena acted beautifully. Like I loved her expression when she was sitting on the table and her husband picks the chair and goes on the other. She's eating her food, and even bhajia, whatever, the acting is superb. So Sheena, what do you have to add to the film?
Thank you. I mean, acting is led by good writing and good directing, so it's a whole team project. But thank you very much. That's very kind. I mean, Jane and I worked on a play about 3-4 years ago in the West End, and we got on very well. We said we want to make something together. So she shared this script, which I knew had written, and I've read it over and over and over again, and every time it affected me immensely. So I thought, well, if something affects you when you read it more than once, there's obviously something in it. And even if I read it today, it still has that profound effect. It's so relatable, as Jane said, to all the cultures that we had in our team. But it's a story of our parents' generation that is never, ever, ever spoken about. And you mentioned about the cookbooks and all of that, which, in the recipes, I'm not a very good cook. So that was interesting. But outside of that, it was, the original cookbooks that my mother was given when she was newly married. So we used all of these props. A lot of the pots and pans and everything was stuff that we used from my grandmother's kitchen or my mother's kitchen, which are the original, the vellum, the rolling pin, the pots, the serving dishes, everything, to try and keep the authenticity as much as possible. Both myself and Nikesh were Gujarati, so it didn't have to be an immigrant couple from Gujarat. Anu very kindly adjusted it, just because I think for us, it was, as actors, it was relatable, that we then workshopped with Jane what was relevant to us, and all those experiences. We're both East African Gujaratis, actually, but all those going, oh yes, that happened, or this is what happened to my mum, or none of the experiences are us per se, but there are so many things within it that were just, it was so common. So many things of a newly married couple. Now you may not get married having not known someone, but 40 years ago, it was much more common. And you really are trying to get to know someone. You are trying to familiarize yourself. You're trying to get comfortable. You're in a new environment. You're going through 40 years, which a script goes through. And it's terrifying and it's scary. And you're trying to get to know each other. You're trying to get to know a different world, a different culture. And UK in the 70s compared to UK now was also another obstacle of how do you get used to that? Because it's the cultural barrier, the racism, there were so many different parts of it that you would have to embrace as well. So, gosh, there's a lot of things about this script, but I mean, I completely fell in love with it. And it was probably one of my favorite projects I've ever done. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful script that we were able to bring to life.
So, actually, when Anupma, if she hadn't said, then we didn't realize that movie didn't have dialogues. The movie was speaking by itself, and it was, yes, I mentioned everything, but I never thought of saying that movie didn't have much of the dialogue, because every story was being conveyed so beautifully that actually was amazing. So from that, we know that our audience have a lot of comments and questions to add to it. Can we take it to audience? Because that's what we connect with. So, Sasha,
Yes,
how
ma'am.
do we take next?
Right. So we have a first question by Neeta Banga. The question is, why man was not served food at all? He's eating darsan.
Can we get people, because they like to ask their question, but keep it very, very crisp. Neeta Banga,
Right.
you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I could see and we could relate to each and every point what we saw in the movie. Only thing I was wondering that why the man was not served food when the son and the mother was eating. on the table, and he was eating some namkeen, farsan kind of a thing. So that was I was wondering. Thank you.
Who goes, Jane?
Sure, and if I misrepresent anything, jump in, Anu.
Okay.
Yeah, because of what Anu mentioned about the food being the means of communication, the sort of even style-wise, that when it got to the point in their relationship that he had disappointed her or betrayed her by not accepting her love, by not accepting her food, by not showing up to receive her love, that she, for her own sort of, I don't know, emotional preservation, had to stop giving. She ran out of love to give. And so his reaction to that is to remove himself, so that when he moves the chair, he sort of, it's his pride, I think. And, like Nikesh, the actor, he felt he really could understand the sort of the pride of that, like trying to pretend like this is fine. I can get my own thing, and how that then, because they didn't address it, they didn't communicate, that it becomes a new status quo actually, and became very normal in their household to not eat together at the table, but to sort of be independent. And then, like somebody made a comment about the son when he has the girlfriend, I think was that you, Nita, that like when he discovers that idea of love and the idea of committing to a relationship, that he goes, oh, my parents had a relationship, like I think it's an awakening when he grows up. So thank you so much for that question.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are taking Aditi. You want to add? Aditi Gaur? Manita, Sasha, see if she wants to speak, then we...
Yes, ma'am. Looking into it. I've sent her the request.
Yeah.
Right.
This is Aditi.
Yeah, hi, Aditi.
Yeah, hi.
So I saw you were writing, so I thought that you want to ask it directly, or you want to share your comment directly.
No, I can share my comment directly. What I felt basically was that the estrangement that was shown was a bit extreme, because it started from it was more based on that anniversary and not coming, but maybe because of lack of words, the continuity was not there. But the exact reason for the estrangement, I did not get really. And the other thing is that I find that when immigrants, especially for immigrants, because, they don't have families to run away to, relatives to run away to, or they only have each other. So this, more than estrangement, the closeness is very marked. When I see them, especially, people who come here for events, somebody's book is being released, something out of the husband and wife, the first thing that the husband says in 100% of the cases, my wife. And in most of the cases in India, if it is concerning, like people who have stayed here, either the wife is not mentioned or comes at the end. I'm just observing, so I felt that estrangement was a bit too marked.
Basically, you felt that the ego was big, that that they drifted apart. So the background of the story.
In real life, I felt that they would not have drifted apart so much for so long.
The writer will, or the director say that
yes.
Was it needed for them to drift apart so much? Yeah.
Yes.
May I answer this?
Please, Anupma.
There are other rooms in the house where I suppose the real life drama really happened. So that was something that I wanted to delineate. There is that when they come to the kitchen, they come carrying with them the history of what happened in, say, the bedroom or the living room into the kitchen. So there is a drawback in not having the dialogue, is the clarity of what exactly happens. And in a short film which is trying hard to be subtle, any extra word is going to be too much. So there is an estrangement, and there is a really good reason for estrangement. And I'm I wasn't convinced that the audience needs to know why that estrangement happens, except that the estrangement happens. And the estrangement is not just over a missed dinner or a missed anniversary. It's been building up. And there is a background to that, which I didn't want, revealed, because that was not part of the story. The story was the food, how the food changes, how the relationship changes, how the food is made and how the food is served, and what exactly happens in the kitchen. The kitchen is the center of my storytelling, my canvas. Jane?
Yeah, I also think, Aditi, it's really interesting what you said about the men giving credit to their wives in public. And I think one of the things that was a priority for us was to show the private side. And maybe, I don't know, like we don't explore the husband's story, really, his public life, his outside world in this film. Maybe that's another film to be made another time, but yeah, and sort of focus on the wife's experience. And that's not to say that that the husband would or wouldn't publicly in this character situation give credit, but I think that's such an interesting thing to bring up about that, the kind of closeness. And it is sad, like we long for that closeness that we saw in the young couple at the beginning, you know, with that strawberry that you mentioned, Amita, the romance of the beginning, and they do come back together and we feel like, oh, it's such a missed opportunity. But yeah, it was really key for us to really focus on what actually happens kind of domestically for the wife, and her perspective on it.
Absolutely. I also like, yeah, when you are telling a story is told. The reason could be anything. So yeah. Neeta, Amita, Sasha, unmute Amita, Devraj. Smita, you have a question?
Yeah, hi, Meeta. Good evening, and everyone around. And amazing movie. I'm thinking it's set in the 70s, but it's what's happening, when they go abroad. And this was set in the UK, a typical Indian household. You know, they don't have a maid, and the early beginnings. She didn't know cooking, and it was all very realistic. It's like he's working, and it was awesome. I mean, it's actions spoken more than words. There was hardly any dialogue there, and I could relate a lot of things here, like whenever anybody goes abroad and then they have a child, so it's taken into a different stage, and then all kinds of little situations happen. And it was so realistic. It was taken very well. But how did you all get this whole thing? I mean, how did you get the theme, and how did you work upon it that made it look so amazing? And there was hardly much of dialogues, and it's a typical Indian. We could relate it. This is when they go, when they are settled in the UK. It could be anywhere in the world. But how beautifully taken this film is. And I was just thinking, how did this story come up, and how did you all work upon it, and what were the things why in this manner, a typical Indian household set in the UK. It could be in also, similar situations could arise. And then, the son grows up, has a girlfriend. I mean, it was taken very well. They were hardly, but it's all actions, and it's portrayed beautifully. I don't think I've seen any kind of a short film which has such meaning.
Thank you, Mita. We are running. Thank you. So, yes. Smita, you want to add your
thank you so much, Mita. And Sheena, you were so brilliant. I just loved your expressions. Every frame, it was totally your movie. One perspective I have to add is, from the lady, she, really grew, as in she didn't know cooking. She was a, pathetic cook to begin with. She learns the art. She becomes excellent in it. she's progressing in her life journey. But that husband, I felt, was just stuck. He had such a big ego. And, when he takes that bite, when his son brings the chair and, he takes the bite and the expressions, he wants to communicate, but he's got such a big ego that he will not. He wants to show her that I can survive without you. So if I had been in that, lady's place, I'm not sure whether, in the story, obviously you showed just the kitchen related part. I would have communicated with him and tried to tell him, hey, this is what, it's not about an anniversary. It's not about, you not taking care of the child, not helping me in the kitchen chores or the household chores. It's about basic communication. And here, as you say, the food was a communication, as Meeta also pointed out, from an elaborate meal to, smaller plates and 2 dishes. So that was beautifully expressed. And obviously it was a wonderful movie and so much was said with no dialogues at all. And if it was London, if it was India, I could so relate to it. It could be any place in the world. A lot of things were so common that, so many people can relate to it. So it was a beautiful watch. And thank you, Sipping Thoughts, for organizing this.
Thank you, Smita.
It was really nice.
Thank you. Thank you, Meeta.
Yeah. I'm going, Anubha. Anubha, you want to add? You have to unmute yourself. Sasha, have we given right to people to unmute?
Unmute. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Good evening. And first and foremost, I would want to say it was beautiful, engrossing, and completely relatable. Sheena, your acting was super. Anupama, the story is great. I would beg to differ with Smita. I just feel it was a typical Indian family where we take everything for granted, in the years to come after marriage. It's not that the husband started loving the wife any less. I mean, you see it in the end, but even when she was sick, he started. It's just that you take your relationship so much for granted that at different times of your relationship, you just express yourself differently. That is it. Initially, when you're married, you're so expressive and you're absolutely into each other. But as time goes, you're there for each other, but you don't feel the need to express yourself. And in any circumstance. And I think it's the wives who are more emotional. And you feel like when she saw the son feeding his girlfriend the strawberry, I think it did remind her of her times. Oh God, even we would do it. But look at us now. Whereas the husband didn't ever feel the need to do anything, or he didn't even feel it. So I don't feel, and I think that's in all our relationships. We expect so much from our husbands all the time in every year of marriage. But for the husbands, it's a matter of, for them, it's nothing. Not to say that they don't love their wives. They keep loving their wives. But I think in the years to come, the expression becomes different. I don't know. That's what I felt.
Thank you, Anubaji. Thank you. I think Mudita has a very interesting question. We are running out of time. Just, I think that will be the last question we will take.
No, I'm not a question. It was a question, yes, but I'm answering it myself. Yes, history will repeat itself. That's life, I feel. Maybe different form and shape and size. But hi, Sheena, you can say what you want, and Neetaji, you and others.
So basically, Mr. Jain is indicating that there will be a part 2 where we will see how the son is also growing forward in the relationship and the food plays the role. So I don't know. So that is interesting. And yeah,
Meeta, I have something to say because everyone has a beginning. So it can come into a part 2. She never knew cooking. Something.
Yeah. So yeah. We will have our regular movie discussion. We have a team here and we just want to stay to the movie. So, yeah, but do you have somewhere, Anupma, that the pattern is the same? It will go the food, like how the son is shown that he loves the food. The wife comes. She also wipes his mouth because of food. So do you kind of say that the pattern is the same?
I don't think the pattern would be the same because the son seems to be a far more intuitive son than the father was. If you look at the scene when the father enters angrily and the mom and the son are eating, he senses the tension, and I think he's learned his lesson through the experiences of his mom and dad. I don't think that the pattern will be repeated. Perhaps he'd be writing a different pattern himself. I don't know if there's going to be a part 2, but obviously she is from a different culture. He is from another culture. So if there is a part 2, then it would be clash of the cuisines rather than.
So, what was my last takeaway from you? What was your best scene that you liked from the movie?
Who are you asking, actually?
Anupma, you.
Me. Oh man. Mm-hmm. Actually, I like the moment when the husband returns to the table after years, because it's a celebratory moment, and he tastes his wife's food after so many years, and that moment is for me the best moment of the film, because I think how much he's missed his wife. And it's not just the food; he's missed his wife. And it's that moment when he realizes how much he's missed, how much he's basically screwed up, I suppose. And I just wanted to respond to one of the comments where the person says, why is it always, a man's ego who is hurt? Even the woman has ego. I absolutely agree with that. It's both their pride that's been at the center of the estrangement. It's not just one person alone. It's both of them put together. They're both responsible for the gap between them, in the relationship. So I absolutely agree with that person. Aditi, I think it was, who said that. Yeah.
So, Sheena, I know that you got into thinking that what was my favorite part from the movie. I caught you there. So
I thought, just in case you ask, let me have a think. I'm not caught off guard. My favorite part. Okay, so I think it would be, from my position, it was doing it. While acting in the film, the one where the same scene that Anupama just mentioned, when the son's fiance comes in and we see him wipe with the food wiping. I think while we were actually doing the filming, that's probably what affected me hugely, because you're sitting there, you're watching this young couple in love, what we used to be. And that was really lovely to do as an actress, because it just felt, I could feel everything. And probably the other one was the dinner scene with me and my husband on our anniversary. Just the playfulness of it and the romance, and we, the next scene we have a small child. So I think the beauty of that to the end, it was the enjoyment of doing those two scenes. So they would be my favorites.
Absolutely. So one thing that was coming to mind when she is seeing her son and the girlfriend or the fiance, whoever, was she cynical? Was she sad? Was she at a loss?
When she saw the son's...
because if you have gone through a happy moment and then you are at that moment when I have lived the life and this is again a new start. So what would I know that we have to close the show, but that thought that came, that what would she be thinking at that moment about the children and her life?
I think it's perhaps what any mother would think, which I'm not a mother yet, but it's what you want the best for your child. You don't want them to go through
what
any pain that you had gone through. So there's a joy in seeing your son and that love and that happiness. And there's a sadness inside you that you've lost so many years, perhaps. But I imagine as a mother, it's the happiness, and it's a bittersweet that you're seeing your son happy. So probably as a mother, that's what those feelings would
so
feel.
Jane, I'm coming to you. What's your favorite scene from the movie?
I love the montage where she's learning to cook, because there's so much sort of fun and movement and seeing that journey. But for me, I think one scene that I mean, it changes every time I see it, and I love hearing the responses, is when he brings the strawberry back and they don't play the game and they're older and it's different, and he's making this, maybe it's an apology or something, and she's just doing the washing up, because it's so it's such a small action to put a strawberry on the counter and a small action to put a strawberry in the bin, but in the scale of this story, it's really epic. And that's, yeah, and it's something that a few people who've seen it have responded to go like, oh, she should have, accepted it, or oh my God, I can't believe, throw that strawberry back in his face. There's all these different reactions to that. So I enjoy that because it's very, very simple, but it kind of has the emotional crux of it.
Yeah, so in the high stress moment, also the moment you see the strawberry, you say, oh, the strawberry is here again. Let's see what happens. So it kind of makes you smile. I think the movie becomes a little more fun and lighter at that moment. So on that note, I want to say thank you to Sheena, Nupma, and Jane. It was a beautiful session, and we wouldn't have got the watching of the movie without Mr. Jain, who kind of proposed it to us. And so it's a brilliant movie, well acted, the story is well. Everything is, and it's done very beautifully. Again, I am getting into thinking that there was no dialogue, and you didn't miss the dialogues. You realize it later that there were no dialogues. That was the most beautiful part of it. Sheena, you were amazing. And how the story is made, how it's been filmed, it's amazing. So we want to thank you all. And
may I just add a little point here? This film was made in the middle of a raging pandemic, and it's entirely the efforts of Jane and Sheena and the love they had for this project that made this happen. I mean, I'm still in shock that the film got made and it's now being shared with so many people. But just after they finished filming, UK went into a total lockdown. So it was that close. A tight filming schedule. They managed it beautifully. So yes, thank you.
Thank you for letting us host this beautiful session. It's always a pleasure to. Hopefully we will be back here again. People are already demanding the second part of it. So, or when the movie if you are deciding to publish it on any platform, then again we will come back together. So on that note, thank you. Have a great weekend. Thank you.
Thank you so much.